Chris, can you hear me? Hello? Oh,
Yes,
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me all right?
I guess I can hear you, but
thank you.
computer volume is way down. I think John brought it. Maggie? Good?
Yes,
Okay.
we are ready.
Good evening, everybody. I would officially like to call the City of Nisswa City Council's special meeting to order on this Thursday, June 25th, and it is 5:02 PM. Before we begin today's agenda, I just wanted to address some procedural concerns that were raised by various members of the public regarding this special meeting. Questions came forward to us as different council members of whether the agenda accurately reflects the written request made by those authorized to call the meeting, or whether agenda items were added after the meeting was called. Secondarily, whether the structure of today's agenda, starting in an open session, then going to a closed session, and then back into an open session, is appropriate and practical for the public and those who have made their way here. And thirdly, residents brought forward concerns regarding the increasing use of special meetings at the city of Nisswa. So those are the 3 procedural items that were at least brought to my attention. I don't know if they were brought forward to any other member of the council. Council members on.
Yeah, the only one that was brought to my attention was the amount of special meetings at this, I believe special meetings and other various meetings, not including regular meetings from Mr. Landers, which I think the total was around 46 or 47 in the last 2 years. No. Which I did some quick math. If you take the $50 rate that we get paid for each special meeting, times 5 times those 40, I think I rounded up actually to 50 meetings, it was $12,500. And trust me, we're not here for $50 for this meeting. We're here for the city, but everything adds up, does it not?
So Ms. Wentler, if you could share, did the written request calling today's special meeting include all of the agenda items on here? Because I was under the impression as mayor that we were here in this special meeting to get the final report from Delaney for the Pickle and Spirits business assessment, and then also for the EDA, which council motioned on last Tuesday. But the other items were a bit of surprise to me when I saw the agenda, and I think that's why a lot of folks from the community reached out. So the Grandview Lodge approval, the data practices policy, those 2, were those properly in the call by 2 council members for this special meeting?
I would say no, they were not called by 2 council members or the mayor. I added them as respectful to Grandview Lodge to approve some city land since we had a meeting and it hadn't been posted yet to get approval for that. And the data practice I've been working on, so I threw it on there as adding to a special meeting to try and get some city business done.
Okay, and then I also had a question. I was just, and maybe, I don't know if the labor attorney's on, but I was confused as to why the closed session performance reviews were placed on the agenda as well, because we did hire Delaney to conduct a review and prepare a report. And usually there's a multi-step process where the council would receive the report and hear the consultant's presentation. And then if appropriate, the council could vote to accept the report. But only after that, then would council in an open meeting discuss the report's recommendations, determine which recommendations it wishes to implement, and decide on any next steps. And that has not occurred here yet. So I was confused why we're going into closed session to discuss the performance of 2 individuals when we haven't even heard the report to understand if we want to accept or adopt as a majority on this council to take that necessary step. And I don't know if our labor attorney is on.
Yes,
Yes, I'm on. I'm not sure if you all can see me right now.
yes.
We
So,
can.
to be candid, it seemed like there was a lot packed into that, so I want to make sure I'm addressing everything. But as far as the closed sessions that are on the agenda today, those are in order to discuss the management assessment of the employees, which is a portion of the report. And to adequately assess whether or not you're going to be adopting the report or make determinations based on the report's recommendations, you're going to need to evaluate the performance within the context of the report, i.e. the management assessment. So essentially to do that, you have to close the session to do that. So it seemed like there was something else that was asked of me, but I'm not sure I followed.
No, I just asked that, I said it surprised me to see this on the agenda because we hadn't heard the report yet. So, you usually hear the report and then council, in the public, right, has discussion about it, provides their feedback, and then wouldn't council be the one to motion to say, hey, now we'd like to go to a performance review of the manager of the liquor businesses after hearing the report and not have it put on preemptively before we've even had a chance to be presented the report?
Yes, well, the report specifically addresses employee performance, so that's why we closed the session to have the discussion about that. We'll get to some of the components of the closed session at some point that'll likely need to be continued, so ultimately I'm not involved in this process as far as, receiving the report traditionally, but it's my understanding that today this is that first opportunity to get the recommendations from the consultants, and then ultimately at a later date, you're going to choose whether or not to adopt the report. Maybe I'm incorrect in that, but ultimately, if this is the day that you're going to be adopting the recommendations in the report, that's what the last open session is for, basically to run through the high level of the consultant's recommendations.
I think council members
But in
on something.
order to do
Oh, sorry, go ahead, Chris.
we have to discuss sensitive performance. That's, we need to discuss sensitive personnel performance information, and the council is going to have to inherently assess performance in that discussion, which is why we have the closed sessions, and also out of respect for the employees and not divulging their private data in open session if we don't have to.
Okay, council members on, I think, has something.
My only question is this order of the sequence events desired and appropriate? 2 closed sessions, then followed by the presentation?
That is what we thought
Yeah.
would be the best fit.
With,
I can speak to that. So the reason why it's set up that way is that, go ahead.
oh, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I got some feedback. I didn't know if someone was trying to interject. So essentially under open meeting law, you're required to enter into a closed session for the individual purpose, i.e. the first performance evaluation. And then you're required to come back into open meeting. And then if you want to go into closed session again, which is what we have scheduled here today, you have to close the meeting again, go back into open session. And that's required under open meeting law. You can't do multiple things essentially in one open session under one item because it's not technically proper. So that's why it's structured this way. I realize that it's an inconvenience, but it is unfortunately the nature of the reality that we have with this arrangement. So
I think the question too, though, we have, I know you can't see the entire room, but we have quite a few number of folks here in the audience that are here that I'm assuming they're here because they want to hear the report, that the part that they're able to hear that's in open session. So to force them to leave when they've
Correct.
all shown up here for the meeting and then come back at a unspecified time because we don't know, is this going to take 20 minutes, 40 minutes, an hour, 2 hours, right? That I think that's what Councilmember Zahn was trying to get at, is can we move the closed session to after the Delaney report?
well,
Because I don't
since the
think we want
agenda
to
has been
displace
posted
people
for,
that are here, right? The government is supposed to work for the people.
yeah, and the government is also required to comply with open meeting law and notice requirements for special meetings, and you can't amend the agenda at the special meeting.
Right, I don't think we're trying to amend the agenda.
Well,
All right. Is there anyone in the public that would have any commentary or perspective on this? If you can state your first and last, yeah, thank you.
Monica Anderson, Camp Lincoln Road. I've been starting to attend these meetings because I'm interested in what's going on. And I'm really disappointed that we're talking about a procedure for a meeting and we're at the meeting. And I'm just disappointed. And I don't know, we've been like 10 minutes talking about process. You guys can do that offline, and when we're here, the meeting should be the meeting. Thank you.
Good evening, Council. Roger Landers, 26587 Indian Lake Road. The report has redactions in it that protect the individual. So I do not understand why we can't modify the agenda, and let's hear the report and let's hear what everybody has to say, realizing that the sensitive stuff is redacted. So let's move on.
Bonnie Johnson, Trailside Run. And I think this is what some of the council members are trying to get at, is I've been involved in a lot of meetings, and sensitive employee information is usually at the end of the meeting. So exactly as Mayor Carnahan was saying, there's 20 people here. So do we want to, discuss one thing, have everyone go, 20 people go stand in the, by the front door for, 20 minutes, and then we as citizens, or an hour, and we as citizens come back? That seems ridiculous to me. So anyways.
Kent Wilkening, 25201 Birch and Pine Lane. I also have been involved in a lot of public meetings. And to have your interim city administrator add things to an agenda without your knowledge, I think that's against the law, and you're breaking a lot of rules. Everything but the EDA and the report on the pickle and the spirits should be removed, because none of you approved that beforehand. She did that on her own. She's going to get you guys sued. The other thing that you look at is you're getting a report that you hired a firm for to evaluate the pickle and the spirit. I didn't realize that you get that report and you immediately do evaluations, or whatever you're calling it, on staff. I thought this meeting was to get that report. You guys digest that report, and then if you need to deal with staff, that's why you call a special meeting. That's what special meetings are for. Councilman Zahn said how many you guys have had, but that's why you call a special meeting. You don't get the report, and then all of a sudden now, because you got the report, you're going into a closed session. I didn't think that was even part of the motion for this special meeting. I believe your motion at the last council meeting was to go over the report and go over the EDA, and that was it.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Mayor and council members, my name is John Kiselishin. I was asked by the mayor a couple of weeks ago to look at your council meetings that you've held over the last 6 months, to look at some of your agendas, and to answer any particular questions that the mayor had or the council had about a couple of items that are here before you. And there's a couple of things that have piqued my interest. But before I do that, what I want to hand out to you, let me make sure I have enough copies here. We'll pass out, got 6 copies there, so 1 for each council member and 1 for the city attorney. A couple questions have been raised here. Just maybe perhaps to touch upon some background. So I'm an executive director of a trade organization, also a lobbyist down at the Capitol. I've been doing lobbying work for 25 years at the Capitol. Worked with trade groups for 15 years. In the last couple of years, I've secured, was it about $12 to $15 million in capital investment money for various clients for sewer and water projects. I'm a former employee of the Minnesota Senate. I'm also the former mayor of the city of Roseville. Just so you're aware, Roseville is a city of 35,000 people at night, about 100,000 people during the day, and I believe our current budget is around $50–60 million. I also am the founder of the Roseville HRA EDA, and I've been through that whole entire appointment process, so on and so forth. I've also, maybe to start out here, I found it interesting that The council member mentioned that there've been 48 special meetings called in 2 years. I don't have the number off the top of my head, but I don't believe in my city that we have called 48 special meetings since 1948, when our city was founded, just to put things in perspective. I have to say I've been to a number of council meetings in Minnesota, other states, even in Canada, and I've never seen a city run by so many special meetings as I've seen in this particular city. I'm kind of surprised by that.
I'll add a clarifying comment there, not to take away from your time, but that was not just special meetings, that was additional supplemental meetings for various workshops, et cetera, before other regular scheduled meetings.
Okay, thank you for the clarification, but still, including those meetings, I would stand by my comments. There was a question here that was raised concerning the HR issue. My question that I would have is, have these employees been asked about whether they wish to have the meeting open or closed for their performance evaluation? And generally, best practices is that that's done in writing. So then that way it determines, that way the employee then you have for the record has been notified that they can have that meeting open or closed to the public, and that they have indicated one way or another. So that would be one question that I would pose, and maybe I should just go through my questions, or do you want to go through one at a time? Mayor?
I'm going to let him finish his questions, then I will let Ms. Wentler answer, and then I'll come to you, Councilmember Hall.
Okay. The next question that was raised was order of the agenda. Minnesota law states that the purpose of the meeting is supposed to be indicated. Minnesota law does not restrict the city council from changing the order of which they discuss those things at the meeting. So the restriction is you cannot venture beyond what is listed as the purpose for the meeting. The order you wish to address them in, that is entirely up to you. There's nothing in law that says that you have to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 down whoever printed your particular list. Next question that was raised, purpose of the meeting. What I understand here is that this council by vote voted to have the liquor report and the EDA discussion on the meeting here tonight. That was a council vote. I don't know what the vote total was, but it was a council vote. My understanding that I'm hearing today is that an employee added extra items to that agenda. That, I would argue, is improper and in violation of the law. A meeting was called by vote. You specified the day and time and the location of where that meeting would be held, and you specified specifically what you would have on that agenda. And that is what you have to stick with for that meeting. Now, members could call another meeting. If 2 council members or the mayor want to call an extra meeting, an additional meeting, you can do that. And you can do that on a particular date, time that could be the same date and time as the meeting that you decided to by motion. But you can't add extra items onto that meeting that you already voted for. Because what if a member wanted to vote no on that particular motion last week? Let's say you would have added these extra items on there, and one of you council members said, I don't support that being on the meeting next Monday. You can't usurp, employees or a minority of council members cannot usurp a vote of the council that was passed by a majority. So members could call a second special meeting, same date, same time. It would be held immediately after this current meeting. But Minnesota law says that that meeting is to be called by 2 council members or the mayor in writing, not by phone call or passenger pigeon or anything else, but in writing, which generally the state has determined to be actually printed on paper or by email in writing, and that it is to be filed with the city clerk, not the public works director, the police chief, the city attorney, or anyone else, but with the city clerk. And then that has to be noticed a certain number of days in advance with the open meeting law. And my understanding is that no one called a special meeting here. And therefore, these other agenda items that you're talking about, I raise questions as to whether those would be properly before the council. And that's all I have.
Thank you. Are there any questions, council, or comments? Okay, based on feedback that we've heard from experts and the public, I would like to recommend that we remove the items that were not a part of this purpose of the special meeting, which would be the Grandview Lodge approval, B, as well as H, data practices policy. If council has no objection to that, and those could be put on a future council meeting agenda, or two council members could call another special meeting to address those items.
I'm okay with it, yeah. Oh, you made a motion? Yeah, okay, I'm second.
Okay, any additional discussion or questions? All those in,
Well,
go
yeah,
ahead,
I
Councilmember
guess,
Hall.
what are we doing? I thought we were here to get a report tonight, and all we've got is a song and dance orchestrated dog and pony show. Are we gonna actually get something done here tonight, or is this what we're gonna do? Cause I got better stuff to do.
Okay, well, part of government is being open, and people from the public brought forward concerns, so we are trying to get to that, but
Why
things
aren't
were
we-
added.
Why aren't we listening to our city attorney that reviewed all this and put this over? That's what we pay him for, is legal advice. It's great, everybody's opinion out there, but we pay a city attorney for a reason. He's on, we're paying him to be here. Why aren't we listening to him? I want an answer for that.
He is here for part of the Delaney presentation, not for Grandview Lodge, not for a data practices policy, which were two items that were added to the agenda. My responsibility, I have always felt this as mayor, is to follow the law, to make sure that we are listening to the public, and to do what's right by the public. We have folks here. So there have been requests and questions and procedural questions. It's not a dog and pony show. It doesn't have to be that dramatic. We're just trying to do things the right way. And sometimes change when perhaps organizations maybe haven't always run the right way. Change, it can be difficult, and it can cause, I don't know, differences. But yes, we are trying to move forward. So there is a motion and a second on the floor to remove the items that were not a part of this special meeting, and those can be at the July meeting, or again, as I said, two council members, you're more than welcome to call a special meeting for those items. We have a motion and a second, so I'd like to call the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Oppose.
Okay, motion carries. And then the second item that has been brought up is that we actually can shift things around, and because of everybody here, I would like to ask this council to consider that we allow Delaney to make their presentation, and then after that is done, then we go into closed session, so we don't have to displace all the folks here in the room, people perhaps watching online, that they don't know when to tune back in. We have just been given information from an expert, a former mayor, someone who's been a lobbyist at the Capitol and has extensive experience in city government, that we can move this. So I think that's in the best interest of everybody here. Councilmember Hall, I am the presiding officer, so if you have a question, I'm happy to call on you. Go ahead.
Can we move this or can't we? What's your legal advice on this? That's what we're paying you to be here for.
Are you asking me?
Yeah, I'm asking you, Chris.
So I think that they are correct. As long as we stay within the scope of the special meeting, we are permitted to move the items around. I just double checked.
Thank you. Okay, I guess I would like to put that motion on the floor, not to displace the public. Our attorney just confirmed that we can move it. If council is okay with it, we can go straight to the Delaney presentation, then the statement of work extension. Then we can go into closed session for the items C and D.
I'll second.
Okay, any additional discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Councilmember Zahn.
On the items B and H, Miss Maggie, are these items that we need to convene for another special meeting? Or is this something that can be handled on July?
Well, Grandview's request is to use our land for parking as they have in the past next week,
Next,
July 2nd and July 16th.
Madam Chairperson, if I may.
Chris, sorry, did you say something?
Yeah, if I may make a statement.
Go ahead.
I would recommend that we hold discussion regarding the other items until a later date, given the fact that we've already reached the conclusion that they were not properly before the council and therefore outside the scope of the special meeting. So
Thank
any
you.
discussions I'd recommend.
Okay,
moving.
thank you. All right, then with that, I would like to call on Delaney to provide us with their presentation of the final report for Pickle and Spirits. Thank you for driving up from the Twin Cities. Thank you for your patience as we work through some procedural items, and we will turn the floor over to you.
Do we need to regroup now?
No worries. We'll take a brief pause. If anyone needs to grab water or run to the restroom, please do so. You can just, there's a little, see the little button right there? And then if you want to move it closer, you can.
Okay, so you can hear me?
Are you
I'm-
ready?
Yes,
Yes, did you push is your green button on?
my green button is
Okay.
on.
We can hear you.
Great. So I'm Flora Delaney, the owner of Delaney Consulting, and this is my partner, Michael Bitzer. Together, we have been working on behalf of the citizens of Nisswa now for about 3.5, 4 months in putting together an analysis, an assessment, and our recommendations for how the citizens of Nisswa and the city of Nisswa can really maximize the value of their 2 liquor operations, the Spirits Liquor Store and Yield Pickle. I like to think of it as a bar, restaurant, pub. There are some fundamental questions that we were asked in assessing this, and we're going to try to address all of those this evening. Am I supposed to be running this? Sorry. Okay, so there's a lot to go over. We're going to start here at the executive summary, moving those management assessments to the end. We're going to discuss the decision framework, which was a very specific request of the city. In other words, what decisions should we make in what order? Because making those decisions have downstream consequences. We're going to talk about a deep dive into spirits, a deep dive into pickle, those particular operations, and then some strategic and tactical recommendations for both. All of these things pin back. It's most important that you understand the very beginning of this presentation. So with that.
Ms. Delaney, just really quick, would you prefer if council has questions that we wait until the very end or the end of a section, or
Thank you.
what would be the preference to make sure that we are doing this as smooth as possible?
Lovely. I would like to have you ask questions as we work our way through this.
Okay,
We have kept the least valuable stuff kind of at the end, the appendix and stuff. So if we don't get to that, I'd rather answer your questions in the beginning. So with that, thank you. Let's talk about the executive summary. You, as city council members and as the mayor, received a full, unredacted version of this report.
You are the only people who got an unredacted version of this report. So just to make everything clear, the general manager of your liquor operations did not get an unredacted report. And I don't just mean that they had the portions about one another's personal information redacted. There's redactions throughout this entire report from page 7 on that they did not and still have not seen. So I just want to be very clear about this, that as we go into this evening and we talk about this, that you're aware of the situation that these employees have been put in, that they have not got the same information as you have, that you have had days, if not weeks, to digest it, and that they didn't get an unredacted version until about 6 hours ago for their portions. So I just want you to be aware of that, because it is unusual that we would be having a business conversation about business operations and the two business leaders have not yet seen this report. Okay. With that, I want to go into what we think are the most important things to know. First of all, let's be really clear about this. These two operations are valuable assets for this community. They make money. They could make a lot more money, but they make money. They're valuable, and they return money back to the city for the citizens of Nisswa that if we did not have, would have to be either reduced services or increased tax rates, as you're well aware. But we have some very specific recommendations that we think could make this a much better operation for the city. The first of which has to do with consolidating leadership and accountability. Today, you have two leaders that report to the city in kind of a nebulous fashion, but don't have deep and meaningful business conversations that are talking about objectives and goals and measurements and accountability so that they can make continuous improvements in those businesses. What they're doing is they're operating those businesses. We would recommend that there should be a single general manager role within the city that is responsible for the liquor operations of the city of Nisswa. That is a business leader role and would be responsible and empowered to make decisions for those businesses that improve their efficiency, standardize processes, manage investments and prioritize investments for immediate ROI, and be accountable by you for the financial performance of those operations. There needs to be focus on employee engagement and also the customer experience. We would recommend that you redesign the organization so that you've got one leader with two unit leaders underneath there and their staff below. That means updating roles, responsibilities, the staffing, and to change this so that you have a more efficient operation that can implement decisions more quickly and make changes to the business at business speed. I hope you hear that word from me a lot this evening, business speed, because business speed is not the same as government speed, as most of us know. And these are two operations that need to make fast decisions in the field to keep meeting the needs of your shoppers and your customers. We think that not only can you do this and get better operations, but ultimately reduce staffing in this organization by adopting this model and in fact, increase business results. The second recommendation, overarching recommendation we have has to do with the questions that we were faced with in the winter when there were real questions about whether or not there should be continued investment in the facility that the Pickle is in. And we think absolutely you should be investing in critical infrastructure repairs and improvements for the Pickle. That means repairing the roof, replacing the refrigeration, which I know at the last city council you agreed to. There very much needs to be added security to that facility. There needs to be cameras, there needs to be locks, there needs to be a lot more security at that location. And I know that you have talked already about upgrading some of the furnishings, but if there were a intentional initiative to upgrade furnishings, including the patio, you could have a much better experience that would attract people and increase dwell time for people who are at the Pickle. Finally, that location should have a minimum of twice a year, a commercial deep cleaning in the back where customers are served and at the bar. That is not happening today, and it's absolutely mandatory that you should be doing that and serving food there. Our third recommendation has to do with the Spirits. The Spirits has had in the past a strong performance of returning profit to the city. But those trends are changing, and they're changing dramatically. We believe that you need to turn the Spirits around and get it back to the level of profits it was able to deliver in 2023. I don't think you're going to get there in 2026, but I think you can by 2027. The main levers for getting there is going to be increasing your labor productivity, and we'll talk more about that in detail. Reducing your inventory carrying costs. The way it works in retail is that you've got to constantly be churning that inventory. When I think of products on the shelves, looking at products on the shelves is the same as looking at dollars on a shelf. And you need those dollars coming back to you as quickly as possible. They need stronger sales execution, meaning how you sell and engage with your shoppers. And they need a more disciplined expense management. So when you look at what's been happening with the Spirits, almost one lever will turn profit almost immediately. And that has to do with changing your labor as a percent of sales. If you look at the blue bars here, you will see from 2021 through 2025, the increase year over year in what the Spirits was paying for its staff. And if you look at the orange bars, you will see what its revenue change was. It doesn't take much to look at that and realize you can't spend more and more every year on labor and have flat to declining sales without that impacting profits. So that is a very, what we would call a fast lever. You can change scheduling. You can change things to make that labor as a percent of sales come back in line with industry benchmarks. As I said, I don't think you're going to get these changes now that it's nearly the 4th of July in 2026. The summer is too important to these businesses, and you may as well say the summer is underway. Plans are made, inventory's been bought, staff has been put onto the payroll. So at this point, all you can really hope for 2026 is to try to stabilize it and make some quick hits. Stabilize these businesses, start to talk about those organizational changes that I mentioned earlier, definitely start to make the Pickle facility investments. And then we have operational changes we're going to talk about later that really should be deployed across both businesses in 2026 to build the foundation that will ultimately be changes in the business and changes in returns in 2027. And finally, my advice to this city is that you have to do this now. I pray, and I'm not a prayerful person, that you're going to act soon at business speed, not at a let's discuss it at a future meeting and we'll talk about it some more. These are changes that need to be put in place fairly quickly, or at least make some decisions that say we're going to put these decisions into place. Let's move in that direction. That's what we want to adopt. And then unleash the people who can get it done for you so that they can start to deliver these changes. So really want to say that the time to act is now.
Before we move on to the next section, I just want to point out, especially to the council members, Madam Mayor, in the lower left corner, what you see on the screen, it says a report page number, lower right corner, excuse me. That corresponds to the reports you have that are unredacted. So if you want to reference the full material, which we will not be draining, right, in a 44-page report that's pretty deep in context. I would encourage you, though, to follow along in that way. And then before I move on to this one, I'm going to pass out 4 slides that are part of this because I think it's going to be difficult to read them. So just so that you have these slides.
So one of the most important things that we were asked to do was to help the city understand not only what decisions should be made and what would be our recommendations for those decisions, but what order should they be in? How do you start to make decisions about these organizations? So we put together this framework and roadmap. So again, I want to highlight top level what we want to say. Number one, maintain both of these operations. If there is anyone here who has an inkling that maybe one or both of these operations should not be owned by the city, should not be operated by the city, we would entirely disagree with that and show that throughout the report when we talk about some of the real opportunities there are, both in terms of your population, your income, the fact that you have such a wonderful tourist season and events that bring people here. We've worked with over 24 cities in Minnesota, and I can tell you there are cities who are facing much dire situations than Nisswa, that are looking at declining populations, nothing that's really drawing people back to the home muni, and they're in a very different situation than you are. So first of all, yes, maintain both its operations. They both have positive cash flows at the moment, and they both could do much better. They both have been giving money year in, year out back to the city, and that's a valuable asset. If you leaned into it harder, if you treated it like I would treat it if it was my own business, I know that I would get more value out of both of these businesses. You do need to strengthen the leadership and organizational capacity, both in terms of how these businesses are operated day in, day out, week in, week out, the levers they use, whether that's advertising, marketing, training, refreshing menus, all of those things that make a business stay thriving and vibrant. But also the city needs to have better capacity to understand how to drive a business forward, how to hold people accountable, how to build out milestones and objectives and make sure they're hitting them so that they can ensure that by the end of the year, they're meeting their budget. We think that by implementing a good customer service model and sales model in both of these organizations, you could increase revenues right off the bat. We've got plenty of other ideas and some things that I'm sure you saw in reading. I'm sure you all read the report and saw this section called The Size of the Prize, where we talked about how some of these initiatives could really pay back. And then we think that there needs to be stronger establishment of performance management and accountability, performance of the business and holding the business leaders accountable for that. We've put together a number of decision trees. These are very basic, but at the very beginning, we think that the city needs to understand the KPIs, the key performance indicators, which are very different for a retail and a restaurant business than they are for a government, about how well you're serving your shoppers and your customers. And then ask yourselves honestly, does the city have the capacity and the capability to manage these businesses for success? Hands-on management. And as an example of why I think you need assistance, let me pull out this is Exhibit C7 from last week's City Council meeting. It was in the big group of stuff that you approve as a whole and you say, yep, that's just regular running the business. This one was from the Spirits of Nisswa. It was the June 2026 report. If you look at this report, what was submitted has nothing, has null sets for the report for 2026. It only has 2025 data. So one would expect that somebody in the city would say, hey, when we do a comparison of this year versus last year, we need to see this year. You can't just put in a report with nothing in it. And I'm not trying to say this to say that your manager did something wrong. I'm trying to say this to the city to say, this is how you're holding a business accountable. When they turn in a report of how I'm doing this year versus last year, nobody's looking at this apparently because there's nothing in this report but 2025's numbers. So when I ask the question, does the city have the capacity and capability to manage for success? I think you need to be honest with yourselves and say, I think we need some help here. Then I think there's some questions around, does the city have the proper org design? Are you set up for success? If not, then maybe we need to do some work there. Does the city staff have a proper operations plan? Do they have SOPs? Do they know what they're supposed to do when they come in the day? Do they have things written out and trained clearly so they understand, how do I receive an order? How do I put things away? How do I count my inventory? And does the city have the discipline to deliver success? If not, you know, I think you need to think about how to address that. There was a question about the Spirits and its long-term location. It's one of the most important decisions we think actually facing the liquor operations. Should Spirits remain in its current lease location after the lease expires in March of 2029, or should it possibly relocate to a city-owned facility? We recommend that you engage with a third party that is an expert in building out a retail location and have them build out and evaluate the feasibility, the costs, and the ROI for building out a new construction at a new location so that the Spirits can have its own wholly owned facility. The reason why we think that's a good idea is, first of all, if we say to you, this is a business we think you should be in for decades to come, this is a legacy business that will succeed for many, many years, then one of the first things we would ask is, of the expenses that we can control for, should you be paying rent? Or could you be building equity in a wholly owned location and take that money and have it build up value for the citizens of Nisswa?
That would not differ. A new construction would not differ from perhaps purchasing an existing facility, correct?
No.
No,
No.
right, that is correct. It's the idea of having it be wholly owned by the city. When you do that, you would gain full control of that facility, meaning you'd be able to control everything about it. Access, the dock, the timing and location of when you would do any kind of improvements or remodels. We think it would also increase your strategic flexibility, because if you were to have your own building, there may be other things like other communities have done that you would want to do with that. Many cities have a liquor store that also have a tasting area that acts as a community room, gathering place that you can use for other things. You could have an upstairs, some have upstairs offices for the liquor operations, but then also rent out some other offices to other businesses to create other means of income, or they use it to house some other things. So that gives you that flexibility. And finally, if you had your own building, you would have a long-term community asset. Let's say I'm wrong. Let's say 30 years from now, you decide you don't want to be in the liquor business for whatever reason. Well, then you have a fully owned location that is still an asset for the city that you can decide to liquidate or use or repurpose for something else. So for the question of what to do for the long-term leasehold of the Spirits, that's our recommendation. Again, we believe that you have to build out the feasibility. We did not do that. We weren't asked to do that, but that would be our recommendation, is that you seriously consider it, especially if you know you have a ticking clock that is as of March 2029, that lease comes to an end and you would like to have your options known by then. So this is really the question about what to do with the spirits. And it really says, not only would you need to think about whether or not you want to do this and have it be the spirits alone, but would you ever actually want to co-locate and create a place that's also with the pickle? Now, that is not our recommendation, but I'm just saying it is a question that you would have to ask yourself. Speaking of the pickle and the decisions to be made for the pickle, what's most critical to me, like a homeowner, when you have some things that are starting to show age, that are starting to wear out, it's time to take care of them. And when you don't take care of them, they just get worse and cost more money. My dad was a carpenter, and Steve taught me that well. So there are some actions that we think you should take pretty immediately. Repairing the roof. I know they've got sticky tape up there that's sealing the seams. Yeah, okay, that's going to last a little while, but let's get that fixed. Replace the walk-in cooler refrigeration. I know you just agreed to that. That back door needs to have a self-locking handset. There needs to be a security system and cameras at every entry point, as well as over the bar, as well as over the cash register, at the off sale, as well as over the pull tab area. That full commercial deep cleaning. And then we would recommend, yes, those bar stools all need to be replaced. And here's the deal. Bar stools need to be replaced like every 10 years. You put it in the budget, you agree that's what needs to happen, and you just get it done. It surprises me that the city is constantly being asked to approve what I would consider operational funds. If there's a capital improvement budget and there's money in there, and the business is saying, I need this to improve or replace or maintain or repair, it surprises me that they still have to come to the city and ask for that. And if the city doesn't understand it, they can delay it. Again, if we had one single general manager over the liquor operations, you hold them accountable to the budget you've told them they have to spend, and then they spend it as they see fit as a business driver and manager to make sure that the business continues to thrive.
Councilmember Zahn, I think, has a question or comment.
Is there a spend threshold, Maggie, in regards to the department heads? That's what I recollect being $10,000 or under to be approved.
It depends whether it's a budgeted item or a non-budgeted item.
What's the process for budgeted items as it sits now? Such as what Ms. Delaney is referencing for like capital improvements?
I will say that most, when did that change? A while back, that all department heads would need to get approval. I'll even pick on a squad car. They still need to bring it back. The council at one point in time wanted them to bring that back to council before they fully purchased that, to decide if there was any changes with the economy or other things within the budget that might come up that we opted not to replace a squad car. So most of those higher ticket budgeted items needed to come back. I will say with chairs being 22,000 or something, that was over the allowed for a budgeted item.
Which is 10,000.
I think it's 20,000 for a budgeted item. Don't quote me on that, but.
Just one comment with that, Maggie, you can jump in. Staff had more flexibility on this issue, like what you're recommending just a few years ago. It really didn't have anything to do with this council, but that changed somewhat recently with a prior council administration before us. So.
Correct.
So it did work a little better a few years ago, just for the record.
We'll get back to that. All right. So the only other thing would be, we do recommend that before next summer, you completely refurnish the outdoor patio with commercial grade furnishings out there. What is out there, I mean, it looks like the same stuff I bought at Menards. I'm not saying it is or it isn't, but commercial grade outdoor furnishings can last a really long time and are easy to clean and easy to take care of. So I would recommend that. So when you look at the pickle factory, we've put together a flow chart of the decisions to be made. We recommend obviously keeping it open. We recommend serving food. That's going to be our next thing that we're going to talk about. You have to make a decision about whether or not it's in the same building. We think that you absolutely should keep it in the same building, and that's that. Because it's such a great location. That's why we think it should be in the same location, in the same building.
On that exact note, there had been in year past, 2 years
Right.
past,
Yeah.
when she was liaison, I was pro tem, I was liaison, he was pro tem, or vice versa on the liquor committee, Flora. We discussed food, which led to that same
Yeah.
split in your path there, but the issue lied in regards to, in the event that a proposal came back for any and all infrastructure upgrades at the pickle factory, what was that threshold where, such as a total for a vehicle in an accident threshold's like 50% typically for an insurer. What's that threshold in which we say, build new, demo the existing?
Mhm.
What would you all suggest be if that threshold, if any at all?
True. Can I just add something to piggyback on that? That's where I was going. With my time on the liquor committee before all this kind of, we actually did a deep dive into the infrastructure of the building, the age. Tom, our Public Works department head, actually got some bids, some subcontractors out there, some professional contractors we use on other stuff. And all those numbers and reports, even back then, were coming in where, whoa,
Yeah.
this is a 50-plus-year-old structure.
Mhm.
You're putting earrings and lipstick on a pig. You need to consider other options.
Yeah.
That was a universal feedback from everybody that looked at the structure.
Yeah. So we don't have an exact number.
No.
We're not general contractors, right? We're not all that, but we have guidance in here that the initial spend up front is the critical to continue to operate for the short term. It's for the facility itself, it's somewhere in the ballpark of $50,000. The roof, the cooler, so on and so forth, right? We've been using a word very intentional, which is the location, not the building. That's what we're focused in on. That location is ideal and city-owned. And we feel that it would be our hypothesis, right? Without doing a new build or an acquisition of additional real estate, that you would lose needed revenue and traffic outside of the downtown area to a different location.
Well, and I'm gonna make a joke at Joe, take whatever he said with a grain of salt. He doesn't drink, so to be able to provide guidance on a liquor enterprise, I don't know, Joe. And I made that joke, I think, when we were on the liquor committee together. That same point was discussed in regards to allowing the pickle as it sits today to be able to continue to generate revenue in the event that, say, a proposal was accepted by the council to construct a new pickle factory somewhere else in that parking lot,
Yeah,
say
yes.
to the southwest of,
Yep, it's very
by the
possible.
trail, by
Yep.
the outfield of the ballpark. And that would still be the same location,
Yes,
right?
that's,
Absolutely. So the decision should be, should you operate the pickle? Absolutely. The next question we have is, should you do it with food? Because,
Well, yeah,
and then the answer is yes.
yes,
You
with the
need
new-
food. Now the question becomes, can you create a menu that has broader appeal than the current menu? In that location with it the way it is? And the answer is no, you cannot. You need to do, again, we would recommend get some people involved. It's good to hear that you've already talked to, your folks who already have connections to a GC about how much a full build will be. But also, could there be a remodel that would take some of the space of the off sale, some of the space of the back room area, and then allow you to have a few more options? If you had a flat top grill, if you had a dunk grill, fryer, if you had a few more things that don't take up a lot of space, you could offer a lot more variety without having to do the full remodel. But frankly, you need to make that decision. And that's why we put the decision in there about if you're going to build or get another location for Spirits, then do you start to say, well, do we do Spirits on one side, Pickle on the other?
I think if you go back to the flow. So just follow this arc, right? Serve food, yes, same building. The same building, there needs to be a budget put together that says flat top plus. The most expensive part of that is ventilation, right? That is not cheap. So that happens here, and it informs in that same structure with the same blueprint or foundation, excuse me. Can we achieve our financial goals with remodeling or reinvesting? We believe you get that answer here, and that guides you yes or no.
I've got a real quick one here. I'm just gonna throw, I'm gonna throw a roadblock in here real quick, just for support. Someone who's been around a lot of municipals, liquor stores on off sale, and seeing a bunch of them closing over the years because they were not profitable. But yet you're saying your recommendation is keep the Pickle, even though I know that the percentages of profit should be between 20 and 30%. And I can't remember what we're seeing here. So
You're
my
not seeing
question,
that.
no, we're not. So my question is, as someone who's been around it, why are you recommending we hang on to it when the profit is, I believe, less than 10%?
Because the reason the profit is so low has to do with operational issues that can be easily addressed and changed.
We will get to some specific thresholds, but I do want to come back to your 20 to 30% number. But we will come to some specific thresholds about how you raise that up.
Were you guys given, I just remembered this, when I first came on as mayor and I was on the liquor committee, I think one of the first meetings we had, the city, pre-me, right, being here, had discussed that building a new Pickle in that same parking lot or not. And there was an analysis that came back financially that said not to build the new building. I don't know if that was part of your.
No, we didn't see that.
Okay, I just remembered that was there because I remember that was one of my first meetings and it was done with a third party and the city had spent money again to have them assess it. But it was just specifically for that. But the answer was no, and it was because of the financial modeling of it that I think it was saying at like year 3 or 4, we would be upside down.
Yeah, it's unlikely to achieve the food mix that we've modeled.
Okay.
That the investment into the current facility would allow you to achieve it, and you would have to, go down to no. And find a suitable new location.
Right. So just with that, with like Jennifer saying, the work has already been done. So like the flat top, you mentioned the ventilation, everything like that, numbers even several years ago, you know, to get a few of those little add-ons done, jump to 7 figures.
Yeah.
Just like that. And we still didn't have anything to show for it, so to speak, into really launching it forward. And so that being said, you know, it's a struggle for me to, you know, that was 2 or 3 years ago that information was 2 years ago, Terry, was all done and it wasn't feasible then. And so I guess my question to you, what would make it feasible today?
Because there's other choices that you can make. You have to make the upstream choices first, right? When you get to food, you can expand your decision set to say, we're going to own and operate the Pickle.
That's what the next.
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. It is. Yeah.
Yeah, I think this might help.
Well, yeah,
Sure.
Okay,
it's come.
so if you decide you're going to stay in the food business, then you have to decide, are you going to stay in your current footprint or are you going to expand through remodeling? And we think that we didn't know that you had done a full analysis of what it would cost. Like that's news to us tonight. So thank you for telling us that. But you need to understand, what was it going to cost? What is the business case? What's the return? How long would it take you to pay it back? And We do think, though, that simple menu additions would really help. We think that we have looked at other locations and know what percent of their sales are food. We think you could get to 10% of your sales being food. That is not a high threshold.
It is 10%.
Oh, sorry, it is 10%. Sorry. We think you can get to 25% because we have seen other places where 50% of their revenue is coming from food. Now, to be fair, they have more places to sit and a way bigger kitchen. So we don't think you're going to get to 50%, but you could get to 25%. And if you were to try to get just a couple of basic things, a $12 burger and fry, burger and tots would be amazing there. So would a chicken sandwich. But what I wanted to show you was this. Let's say, start at the left, keep the pickle open. New location with or without food, right? You say, okay, I think we're going to go no food. All right, well, that's not a really smart idea. It is not a smart idea to have a bar restaurant with no food because dwell time will go down and intoxicated people will go up. So that is not a good combination. You want to have people staying, they're eating, they're drinking. The question of, does the city operate the food concessions? You don't have to operate the food concessions. You could outsource that, subcontract that. You could find I'm going to call it like a food truck kind of idea of somebody who comes in and runs that, and they either use your location or they bring their own food truck. And that is kind of a permanent way that you're managing food, and you have caught a revenue sharing with that food truck for how you're sharing that. So there are a lot of decisions to be made there. What we heard when we got here in February was, should we close the pickle? And should we keep serving food? And so what we are saying is, no, you should not close the pickle. And yes, you should keep serving food. There's a lot more downstream decisions to be made and more data that we have to get, more analysis, more costs. But this is our best example of providing you with what are the decisions you should make and in what order. I think it can feel overwhelming when you want to make all the decisions at once and at least start to make some of the basic ones.
Well, I think one of the things that's interesting too is you talk about you have to have this framework and the strategy, and then you can look at other things. Like I mentioned, when I first came on, Councilmember Hall had previously been on the liquor committee, and then I was on, and we had talked about things, and he had always said we should do burgers, right? And we did, I think I shared this with you guys when I met with you, we did a brainstorming session, including several employees of the Pickle, and we were trying to think of, hey, what are things we could do to try to plus up the business, right? Just for that fiscal year. And it was things like, do we look at adding breakfast? Do we look at maybe trying to do, even if it's a burger night, just a couple times in June, let's see if it works, right? All these different kinds of things. So it's interesting to see that coming up as well through your analysis.
Very good. We're going to transition out of the top line recommendations and dive down into each business. These largely support our larger recommendations, but it helps to give you further context why we're making the recommendations we are and what we found along the way. So starting with Spirits and Nisswa. This is the top line overarching trend of why profit has decreased. Profit has decreased because transactions have decreased in the store. Now, this is a trend in liquor retailing. People are drinking less, people are buying less, and so on. The transactions are down in line with the rest of the market, but revenue is actually holding, if not marginally up over a 3-year period. We believe that you've hit a saturation point of price increases, that you can no longer increase prices at that rate to compensate for driving traffic down. So what you need to do is get more operationally sound in marketing, advertising, and what is called integrated promotional programming, right? There's really great, when you walk into the Spirits, it's really well merchandised. It's really well signed. You know what's on sale, but you don't before you go to the building. We need to drive traffic to that store so that people can take advantage of the great merchandising, of the great customer service, of the great pricing that's in there, and close the delta on the sales and the traffic that's there. Productivity, Flora talked about as well. This is, I'm gonna go through a little bit of this quickly just to save some time, but the headline here again is it's not sustainable with the sales rate that's there. And with the organizational redesign, we believe that that cascades down all the way to every position that's there to ensure that staffing levels are right, pay grade scales are right, roles and responsibilities are right. And we believe that in a relatively short period of time, this can reverse.
So I just want to quickly point out, look at these metrics: sales per square foot, inventory turns, dollars, and sales per dollar in labor. These are retail-driven metrics. These are the numbers that a business manager needs to be looking at, driving, have goals set at, and then evaluated and held accountable for, because when you get those right, the revenues get right, the profit gets right. Right now, the city just looks at revenue and profit without understanding what are the things that we should be doing to get the revenue and profit we want. So these are important when we talk about things like KPIs and how the city needs to adopt new levers, new ways of looking at business health.
The example that I was going to give to support that is on the right, the sales versus labor. There should be a mechanism in place that catches the trend between 24 and 25 that says, whoa, my sales productivity just dropped by 50 cents. That's meaningful until it getting all the way to the end of the year. And now you're looking at $11 versus $9, right?
Yeah.
$9.40. So you're catching that trend. You're recognizing what choices you made in the operations, because there were choices made in that, and you're acknowledging that that choice had a material impact back to the business, and you reverse that and you catch it back up. Okay, so 5 operational gaps to close that we believe are meaningful to the business in the spirits of Nisswa is number 1, a loyalty program. Your POS system is fully operationalized against a loyalty system. Most liquor stores of single operation to scale, right, have a loyalty program. This is something that typically drives sales within 3 to 5% for those involved in the program, and with really decent marketing by events can drive sales within 5 to 12% as well. So this is a when you think of like crawl, walk, run, right? This is not a 2026 initiative, but we do believe that this can easily get off the ground early next year in the important off-season time, so that by this time next year, you're really capturing all of those customers. 2 is employee training, resetting the employee training program, which would involve deeper education, and more importantly, segueing to the second point, which is the customer service model that's in place. The customer service is really good, meaning those employees are really nice. Like they treat customers really, really well. They are kind, they go an extra mile. What we need to infuse into this is a true sales model that makes sure that somebody coming through the door leaves with what they want, are inspired to make further purchases, that have reasons to come back. And that's a true sales program that we would recommend putting through employee training. The next is elevating the buying practices that are going on. Wrapped around, again, we use the integrated promotional planning calendar, where it is calendarized out for 12 months, driven by seasonality, by holidays, by the predictability of what happens and why people drink alcohol throughout the year, right? It's actually pretty predictable. And most of these programs, they are a rinse and repeat once you run it for a year, right? You're dusting it off and saying, these 8 things worked, these 2 didn't, I'm going to try something again. And once you operationalize this for a year, it becomes really, really easy to work. And then the last is a true marketing program. The only really marketing outside of the building on an ongoing basis is still basically on the presence of the facility, which is the pylon, the tombstone, right, and the LED outside. Really important messaging, really great location for that, but it's not enough to capture 650,000 tourists that are coming to this area in your seasonal months to drive them to the store. So we believe that a true marketing program partnered with the pickle, right, will drive incremental sales.
I would
to it.
say though, Josh is doing Facebook posts.
Yes.
Which is not the same as Facebook advertising, which is not really meeting everyone. It's like if you follow Spirits, you'll get that. But we think that there's a lot more targeted marketing and advertising that could be done just to get Nisswa and the folks in this area to come to Spirits.
So we dimensionalize this out in a SWOT. Strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, right? So just to level set, Nisswa's profitable, right? This is a huge strength. You also, let's just acknowledge a few things. The moratorium is a big deal, right? You have a monopoly on sales, right? That's a huge strength as well. And we believe that with good customer service, good team cohesion that's already there, we have a really good foundation to build on the strengths of the employees that are there. Weaknesses. There's operational functions that need to improve, right? We talked about marketing, loyalty program, buying practices, pricing resets, those types of things as well. There's a lot of depth in our report against that. Opportunities. THC is one that comes to mind, right? There were decisions made that brought Spirits into that market late. That market is compressing quickly, real fast, right? One of our other city clients went from 11%. They grew their sales on 2.5 million. They grew their mix to 11%. And I just checked in with them last month. They're down to about 8%. And they're going to probably by the end of the summer be down to 7% because price compression is happening. But that is still a meaningful amount of not just revenue, but a higher product margin, right, than there is in alcohol. And then threats. Threats are outside of your control, largely, right? So people are drinking less. There's always conversation about Minnesota legislation changing, alcohol anywhere, those types of things. Those are things that the city should be monitoring, but in our analysis, competitively looking at the marketplace, there are no real threats against the spirits business. So the bottom line is this when it comes to spirits. If you look at the top, reasonably speaking, right, you would want to manage this, but I just want to say reasonably, since 2023, revenue is largely flat. There are a lot of liquor stores and a lot of munis that are not having these same experiences either on or off. Your revenue is a huge strength, right? But that masks the larger problem with revenue, which is about the 7% to 8% decline in transactions that are happening, right? That number will likely continue to fall off for a little bit. So you'll probably be looking in the next 1 to 2 years at a 10% decline in it. That's a transactional count. Revenue per transaction has increased and average selling price has increased. This math just validates that prices have increased within the store. They've increased in an appropriate way to be market competitive. And in the competitive analysis, there's a slide in the index where we visited a bunch of local retailers. Pricing is incredibly competitive at Spirits versus the rest of the local marketplace as well. So the opportunity, which is really why we're here and what we're trying to drive to with Spirits, right? Adding a new loyalty program, we believe brings in an incremental sales per year when you have it up and running and it's mature, right? So this we're talking about likely 2028 and beyond. You should be budgeting on the conservative side of about $133,000 in incremental sales and that level of profit, $8,500 or so on. The reduction in labor is the most meaningful impact that can be done this month, tomorrow, next month, right? And our recommendation in the report is to use our baselines that we've put in place and just responsibly pull that number back by 50 basis points every month. So you're managing that number down and keeping an eye on what's happening with customer satisfaction, what's happening with sales, what's happening with employee morale and workload and those types of things, but immediately start to ratchet that down. The expansion, if you already see, we've adjusted what would normally have been a much higher number. That THC mix should be about 5 to 9% of sales. So that's an additional conservatively that $222,000 based upon that 4 million plus in sales in terms of mixing. And then online sales is another huge opportunity as well, especially seasonally, especially in this market. Your store is set up with a full e-com site that is not returning really any types of transactions. And it's because your customers don't know it's there. They don't use it. It's not important. It's not marketed. It's not used. It's an effective website, right? But the e-com channel is basically not turned on. And these are just 4 easy sort of blocking and tackling things that work can be put against immediately to get to the bottom line of increasing sales from 445,000 to 846. Again, not this year, but starting in 2027. We do believe that even with July and remaining back, you can make more, importantly, more impact to your bottom line, right? And we're looking at adding on an annual basis $130,000 back on top of what has been about $350,000 in transfers to the city every year. It's a very meaningful difference in 2027 numbers versus 2025 numbers.
So you talk about this for 2027,
Yes.
but if some of these changes, like you said, we could do them, tomorrow or next week. Do you have a percentage range of where you think we could get to? No, I mean, we're in the season, right? But we have a short season, but the height of the season really kind of starts around the 4th of
So
July.
really, really great question. When we approach this type of work, you get analysis paralysis and you get modeling there's another word for the modeling, right? You can model everything and anything. We wanted to give you clear and clean cut numbers in terms of what we were comfortable with. What we don't know is what the city will decide to do, invest in, what choices to make. And we're just not going to put time and energy against things that won't happen, might not happen, or so on. But to answer your question, more. It's the way that I could say it. Yeah.
I like
Go
your
ahead,
question.
Councilmember Freight.
I like your question because I like to think of you guys as the board of directors of this business. And the citizens of Nisswa are like the stockholders, the ones who get to reap the benefits of a well-run business. And so I think you're asking the right questions. That's what I would hope for the citizens of Nisswa to also see is that, if they've got questions about whether or not Spirits is a good venture for their city to have, the truth is all of that money that they've been returning year in, year out, and even more is possible, which just means that you can have more services here for the citizens. So I hope that that's kind of coming through.
Flora, is that top line revenue for the sales increase, that figure on the bottom of 846,900? Why, with that much increase in sales, what would the net profit not be higher? I mean, you're
That's
talking
what we start to
26
get
grand.
into when we model. We're like, well, should we say that, okay, they do have the customer service model and they have brought down the labor and we can apply a different rate, and you start to get numbers that start to have so many assumptions built into them. You've got 12 different assumptions on top of assumptions. So we try not to do that. And what we try to stand behind and always make sure the other one's being agreeable to is that we give you conservative numbers. We give you numbers that we know you can hit. We're not going to put a big number out there and say, well, if you get lucky and you do everything just right, you might reach that. We're trying to give you numbers that we're saying conservative estimates built up 2025 baseline. So we're saying these are what we know we can get, you know, the city to deliver. So if your question is, could you challenge that? Here's what I would love to see. You put a general manager in charge of this operation. You get them starting to develop some of these changes and implement some of these changes. And then you say to them, now I'm going to challenge you. How do you make us even more profitable? Because I think those are absolutely the right things to hold a business manager accountable for. I think there is room upside, but we're not going to come here and tell you, you can for sure get there.
No, and you shouldn't, because it's wise for you and your firm. But on that basis, would you, on a municipal level, is setting revenue goals and net profitability goals wise for a municipal liquor enterprise such as what we have?
Absolutely.
Okay,
It's,
and-
it's a, yeah, there's.
The answer is yes.
I would actually say it's arguably more important that you're tuned into that because of the effect to the community and the citizens that this is all benefiting and coming back to. What's the expectation that all this time and energy and resources going into, right? In addition to that, in retail, in restauranting, in hospitality, it is a scorecarding, performance-driven, P&L-driven culture. They need that.
I'm going to pause you right there then.
Yes.
So on that basis, what is going to incentivize a government employee, more or less, this general manager, to meet and exceed any set revenue goals or profitability goals if they are on a government salary, when you have a Cashwise Liquor or a
Yep.
West Side Liquor manager or the folks over at Main Street, for example?
Yep.
Those owners, privately held, have the ability to incentivize via discretion-based bonuses
Mhm.
or certain knowledge, skills, ability bonuses.
Yeah.
Does the municipality side of what we're doing here and talking about here, do we have tools like that to try to give some extra to be able to push them along?
Yeah, I could tell you how one, well, it's two, another client, a municipality, their their on-sale managers describe their jobs. They both worked for national chains, retail, and food beverage industry chains. They look at their jobs, this is their language, they call their jobs unicorns. That's the word that they use. They recognize how fortunate and lucky they are to have the job they have, employed by who they are, at the salary they have, with no bonus, with no upward momentum. And they are incredibly grateful for that opportunity. It's about finding the right people that recognize that opportunity. When you come down to line level employees, the pay that the city offers, in addition to para, is a meaningful incentive in the muni structure that can't be overlooked at all. So you have levers in place. You do not need to throw money at it. Recognition is important. Like, people should know they're doing a great job all the time, not inflating it, but being realistic. There should be fun things, right? Free things, low cost things that are happening for employees.
But on that basis, are you making those confident statements based on a strict comparison to the private sector?
Yeah.
So let me
So
just say.
I'm gonna add
I've
one more thing to that,
reviewed-
though. You understand my point, just like when we spoke, like, it's the nitty gritty of this. That we are molasses up here and we're tied to be molasses. It's how government works, as you already alluded to. They don't have the ability to make snap decisions, and we just ran through a scenario of that on the budget aspect for capital improvements. But where are we going to find that perfect fit? And I'm not expecting you to answer where we're going to find a perfect fit for this. All I'm stating is, on a generalized basis, high performers typically are highly incentivized.
I think that I hear what you're saying, and I understand your point of view of like, hey, I can't offer them a bonus. I can't say, if you hit this number, I'll give you this bonus, which they might be able to get if they worked at another retail establishment or they worked at a different restaurant. But what you offer those employees is so much more than what they can get if they worked at another retailer. Their pension, their benefits, their vacation time, the quality of life, their ability to work when they work, it is pretty phenomenal. Because if I go work in retail, I have to give you 70 hours of availability for me to get 40 hours of work. That does not happen here. The bar restaurant manager not only gets to make an incredible salary, but he's a bartender who gets tips on top of it. There is stuff here that you are giving these employees that should not make you feel unconfident in asking them to deliver the very best and asking them to improve year over year. I absolutely think you can get there, and you need to find the right people who've been working in a big organization and says, I want to go somewhere where I can run a multi-million-dollar business, because that's what both of these businesses are. And I can do that working for one organization without all the politics of working for a big company. A lot of people would find that very appealing.
And I hope you, sorry, Joe, I hope you understand that the basis of my comments is because I come from the private sector. I have a business in the private sector, and I don't know the private sector-esque of liquor. I don't know the private business-esque of a bar restaurant. I don't think any of us do. So to that extent, it's why you're here. If we're getting the verbal piece of it saying, we're confident that this is structured just fine to be able to find that high achiever, then great. If there's any backing of supporting documentation on that, because this council is possibly going to be posed with the question of what are we going to do next, and bringing on a general manager to oversee the enterprises, is that something for us to consider as a council in regards to what is the expectation? Is it within reason for what is it structured as?
So when we did our analysis, when we talked about SWOT, right?
Yeah.
A threat, right, would be human resources, right? Meaning, can you staff this? Can you provide leadership? Can you provide, there's nothing that we found that is anywhere near to a threat. In fact, I would encourage you to lean in and recognize that there are so many restaurants closing. There are a lot of people on the job market, that this is the type of opportunity that people would relocate for. I have great confidence in that.
I think Councilmember Hall has something, then Councilmember Fraley.
Sure, and maybe to piggyback on this, and I apologize, you can tell me, we'll get to this later. But when I was on the liquor committee and then Jennifer came on, myself and Jennifer had many conversations about kind of the reverse of what we're talking about, looking back up at the people on this table, right? It is a public business. It is not owned by an individual. Still, the driver's there no matter how well or how good of a manager you get, which, you know, everything that you've said tonight, it's like, yep, I agree. You know, those are things that have been talked about in the conversations, you know, going forward. I guess the biggest question with that then is to continue this in the future, even getting individuals like yourself here to put this all together to get the report. You know, it's something that I have been asking for several years, you know, for something like this, saying, hey, this needs to get done before we go build a building. We need a business plan put in place. This needs to get done. Obviously, these chairs change over, you know, even when I started asking those questions, the same people weren't up here. So for a city to do all this, invest all this, keep it going, get the ball and the momentum going that way, you know, what is the advice, you know, kind of back also to the council to make sure that as seats change over here, the city understands all the work that's been done by this group of people, getting it to this far, to keep that driver going forward, to keep, you know, even a step before what Jesse's talking about with the manager motivated, you know, because, you know, prior there haven't been business people in these seats. And this is a conversation I know Jennifer and I've had many times about, like, You
Yeah,
know,
I
who's
think
gonna go? Does
yeah,
that make sense?
I not only understand, I really greatly appreciate your question. You're asking a fundamental question of how does government run business
Right.
effectively? And it's simple in concept and very difficult to execute. And this does come later, but now I can just skip it later.
Yeah.
Respectful to this group here.
You don't have
Elect-
to be respectful, just.
Elected,
state it the
elected officials in a city are in charge of policy,
Yes.
right? Policy and governance, right? These seats over here and the seats behind us are in charge of practice, right? So what needs to happen is really established clear lines of policy versus practice. So because a city council and these muni businesses, Joe, to your point, should not rely on who's being elected to provide this benefit back to the city. That resides within, first and foremost, the city administration. So that is the city administrator, that is the department head, and then the team that flows under this. And there are systemic ways to build that muscle back up and reinforce it over time. That's getting the right job descriptions in place. That's providing ongoing education for people. That's finding, that's the answer. Policy versus practice and separating the two. And ensuring that there's well-documented decision-making thresholds, processes that happen, and clear operating standards, SOPs, and so on. And then a reasonable understanding to say, in addition to what I just mentioned, people's opinions are still matter. They still valid, right? You might have ideas or so on, but they need to be treated in the context of what I just mentioned of policy versus practice.
So then would it be fair to say, as one of the first steps moving forward, the city council also needs to first look at our policies, our procedures, our driving, like what got brought up earlier? Hey, can a department head spend $5,000, $10,000, you know? Would that be your advice for really, even before everything you're saying, to like dive into what the city may need to do policy procedure wise to make it effectively ran going forward as these seats change out?
Yeah, I think that's a good example. I think where it starts is the leader that gets hired as the city administrator. That's where it starts. So that search, that should be put into context, because ideally that person brings relevant expertise, relevant skills and experience. But we've also worked with really great city administrators and helped them build those muscles back up in how you do this. There's ongoing education courses that you can take. There's great books you can read, like there's outside resources and so on. It starts there. That's a great example, Joe, of like downstream things that do need to be documented. That should be more of like top of mind. Like I know what those thresholds are, right?
Councilmember Fraley, do you have something still?
I was just gonna pertain to Jesse, the private and public and the bonuses and so forth like that. I do know one municipality, they were looking for a general manager also for their on sale, off sale. And their consulting firm suggested looking into the private industry. That's what they did. They ended up having a manager of a bar restaurant that was very successful, but the owner was not in state. And they realized that their health benefits, they had para, the salary was close to what they were making, but when they looked at everything else that was there, and they really turned that business around for the municipality. So it can be done. Just have to find the right person.
Great.
What kind of salary is this general manager going to command? What do you imagine for
Yeah,
a city
so-
like Nisswa?
You're going to need to go through a process which we've defined, which means you have to write the job description and make sure that the job description fits the scope of the role. Then that has to go through a grading process that fits your city structure and this market. So we're not in that place.
So you're not involved in assisting cities like Nisswa and
We
finding
are
what
involved in
SPM
writing the job descriptions and providing recommendations back and the structure of what it is. But as far as the particular grading scales for each city, we don't know that off the tops of our heads. We don't know the community impacts, off the top of our heads. But those would be the next steps, Bruce, to.
Obviously you've been involved in a lot of other cities, even similar to Nisswa,
Mhm.
which we rely on our tourism. So, how effective is this? What are you seeing?
I'm not sure I understand the question. If effective is.
Getting a general manager to run our liquor store and, our bar, the pickle factory. What are you seeing as far as how effective is all this? What are you seeing as far as, benefits? What's the
Well-
quick turnaround?
Well, we are so confident in that's what we're leading with. Our level of confidence in the number one overarching opportunity to help reset the liquor enterprise for the city of Nisswa is to reset the organizational structure. We've gone through a bunch of modeling and ideas and so on, and we landed on this structure because we believe the city would benefit from having one leader over both. That also reduces the burden of reporting back to the city by 50%, meaning it reduces one department head for the city administrator to manage, right? There's more implications to it than just that. We also believe that there's incredible efficiencies that can be driven across both organizations, that, the pickle's good at some things over here and the spirits is good at some things over here, but for some reason, they're not good at some of the things both together, right? And that's because there's two different leaders in place, right? That have two different sets of strengths, two different sets of priorities, and so on. That's just about individual leadership. So I'm not in a position to quantify that, but I can tell you that we believe greatly that this is the right decision for the city.
Can you give us some examples of some other cities like the city of Nisswa where, you provided these ideas with the general manager and so forth, and they've had success, and what level of success have they had?
Lakeville, Edina, it's more multi-unit, it's more
I'd like to know that.
Which is relative.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we've worked with a number of cities that have multiple facilities, right? So they got 3 liquor stores. They got 2 liquor stores in and on, in a bar restaurant. And by unifying them under one common manager and one department head, they have an ability to be able to have the right bench strength across those organizations. They have a unified training program. The employees get a similar experience no matter who they work for, which is very different than at Nisswa. Your employees have a very different experience depending which part of the liquor operations they work for. And honestly, Bruce, what we're recommending as a next step is that you do need to have new job descriptions, reorg, and a recommendation, because if you were to have one liquor operations general manager, you would probably be lifting some of the work out of the current general manager stuff so they can get very focused on the tactics of running their operation and their units, and pull up some of the reporting, some of the administrative work and goal setting there, so that both of those leaders could be operating as efficiently as possible. Does that
I
make-
imagine there's no guarantee in any of this. And so how often does this work? How often does it maybe not work and you got to go back and tweak it some more?
It depends on who you hire. It depends on whether or not you've set them up with the right guardrails and thresholds for what success looks like, and whether or not you're holding them accountable and providing them with development and training to be successful. There's so much there, but we've seen in more mature cities that have had this, where they have multiple units, all reporting up to one manager, that they've been able to effectively manage the day-to-day operations and drive improved performance for their citizens more efficiently than when they had 3 or 4 leaders who reported up to the city individually, each talking about what their store or their operation was doing.
So what's the bottom line here, when it's all said and done, what's this gonna cost the taxpayers in the city to go ahead with something like this?
If you're referencing just the hiring of a new department head and the reorganization, that should be a net benefit back to the city and actually a reduction in overall labor for what's budgeted for 2025.
And we've already found $102,000 that you could extract out of labor budget right now from Spirit. So we feel like you could do this, and net, you won't spend any more in payroll than what you're spending today.
What kind of cost do you usually see in going out and getting one of these general managers? I mean, you're gonna have to go out and recruit them or have somebody find them. So what is this gonna run us?
We didn't get down to that level because I don't know that you would need a headhunter. I don't know that you would need a recruitment firm. I would not ever assume that.
We'd have to go through a headhunter to find something like this, wouldn't we?
No, I would not assume that.
I've never seen a city use a headhunter to fill one of these roles.
So where do you find someone like this?
Through really good networking and posting and regular, job postings that are out there. Yes, yeah, definitely.
So you've got to get somebody that got some good skills to bring them in here to do the job we need to be done. We don't want to get somebody that's failed, so I imagine it's going to cost something.
It will, yeah, but it'll cost more in terms of capacity to the city, in terms of real, actually like a dollar and cents on a budget line.
I'd like
I'm
to,
afraid we don't have a dollar number. If you're looking for us to give you a dollar
Well,
figure,
we'd
we
want
don't.
somebody that was good, and if there's a guy there, or a lady that's out there that's good, how do we get them to come here?
can
Hey,
I,
Bruce,
I'd like
I know
to,
people who make
Lady Flora and Michael, sorry, I'd like
$200,000.
to interject here for a moment. I appreciate all your questions. I'm just curious right, because this is getting kind of a deep dive, really granular about a hiring process. We haven't even decided as a council yet if we want to go in that direction.
Right.
Were you planning to address this at a later point? Or was this kind of already woven throughout because it was in your executive summary? And I'm just asking we as a city opted to invest in having you guys here. So we do want to take the time to go through this, but just also for the folks here, just looking at a time check, we're almost at 7. I don't know if we're moving to the pickle next because I know we were getting to the Spirit's financial opportunity, but based on the packet, it looked like the pickle next. And because there are a lot of people here, if we were jumping to the pickle next, I wanted to allow if there's any folks in the audience that want to make any comment up to this point, just about Spirits, because that's what we were talking about. But if you have more to discuss with Spirits, I want to allow you to finish. Don't want to cut off Councilmember London, but again, we haven't gotten to that point of discussing if we're going there or not as a council. So I feel like these are good questions for once we make that decision. And so are we okay? Do you have more on Spirits right now, or are you okay if I see if any folks from the audience would like to come up and just share any feedback? I would give individuals, if you want to come to the mic, a minute each. And just as it relates to Spirits, because we haven't gone to the pickle yet. Going once, going twice. Okay, gone. Oh, Mr. Landers.
And you touched a little bit on THC product. Now, I'm 84 years old, and I'm neither for or against, but this is a new product that you see a lot of older generation here, and it when you read those middle paragraphs here about THC and cannabis products, it sounds like we're not even selling them, but we are, right?
It was brought into the NISWA assortment in February of this.
No, it's in
March.
In March.
In March of this year. So we started our engagement the week in March.
Okay, so it is definitely a new product.
It is very
But-
much a new.
But you're saying here that has been slow to respond to these market changes. Now, is that because it's so new that we haven't had a chance to understand it, or what's going on here with this? Because we're looking at a product, as you see on the board there, that you can expand it from 5 to 9%. And I've seen evidence that there's a lot of communities that THC is up to 15% of the total revenue.
Yeah.
So help me understand what's going on here with the THC.
Yeah, the best that I can answer that, sir, is a very good question, is it wasn't made a priority for the businesses. And they were slow to react to the customer demand in the community. And that's when they chose to bring it in.
Okay. All right, very good, thank you.
Thank you. All right, well, let's have you guys continue. Does council need a short break or should we keep going? Keep going, okay.
The pickle. Okay, pickle. Once again, very strong asset, underperforming for the city and the community. 2025 sales, 1.6 million, net loss of $47,000, largely because of the payroll growth of 13 to 16%, which was 3 to 4x the 4% revenue growth, right? So when you look at the P&L and it just shows you where that is. There's a few things that we encountered that were not unusual, but I would say more extreme in the pickles financials, which were the fact that there's been multiple POS transitions in that business. And in the last POS transition, the POS data, the back end of it, was not built out in its entirety. So normally our analysis of the off-sale or on-sale business is on par with what you get with the on-sale. We were not able to deliver that to the city, and I just want to put that in context. That's the very first bullet point. The profit masks an underperforming bar and food operation, right? We talked about that. Beer and food, primary growth engines. Food is growing, right, at the pickle. There's a demand there. It's actually increasing with not much change to the offering or the assortment. It gives us that confidence that food is part of the answer to the pickle moving forward as well. Mark left, but a business conservatively net profit in this revenue range and operations, you should be looking at a net profit return conservatively of the 10 to 15%. That is extremely conservative, but considering where you are, that just points the picture that you should be in the reversal of about a $200,000 swing, which if you just take 10% of the 1.6 million, you're at 160,000 plus the net loss, right? That's the swing that we're looking at. So to optimize that, first of all, the off sale. Off sale is $240,000 of the 1.6 million. I do want to point out that it provides a necessary and valuable purchasing power, strength, warehousing for the on sale as well. There are transfers that take place that are regulated within the Minnesota distribution system, right? Where you have to receive product into the off sale, transfer it into the on sale as well. So having your off sale premise is smart, needed, almost required to operate a muni in the state of Minnesota to get the returns that you have, okay? Generally speaking, these are just your categories broken out. And again, the tobacco is what really blew us away. Your tobacco was up 222% year over year. And we had a straw bet that I won. And we were informed that there weren't 200% more smokers. It was because a local competitor closed. So there was some convenience store, C-store closed that was pretty close to it, right? That would certainly drive that. So I don't want you to think you can replicate those numbers again, but you should expect that number to go forward as well. Strengths, right? Incredibly loyal customers, right? Incredibly loyal. The pride in the pickle, the legacy, the stories. My last time here, I purchased a hat. That next night that I
Thank you
came-
for your business.
You're welcome. I came home and that was Art-A-Whirl in Minneapolis. I went to a huge gathering at a concert and I had 4 people come up to me that I did not know and say, the pickle, the pickle, the pickle, right? There is a great tradition, a great brand built up within it. That is the strength of the pickle in addition to its physical location. What's that? Yeah, right. The weaknesses, there's inconsistent customer experience by the staff, right? Some of it is staffing levels, right? And just the mapping the number of people to the amount of customers that are there. Some of it is the model itself, that there aren't standards in place for customer service. There aren't standards in place for a service offering model as well. So it's really left up to the hiring practices, the personality, and so on of the individual who is engaging with the customer as well. Opportunities, THC should be available at the bar in addition to the off sale, right? Customers in the marketplace are telling us today that people are choosing that drug versus this drug. And we're underserving the customer need in this community to offer that beverage at the bar, right? There is a decent offering in the off sale, and we just need to bring that same offering into the on sale as well. The leaning into the summer traffic, we believe there's another opportunity there as well of maximizing more of the tourist traffic, really looking at engineering events in a value targeted way, making sure they're sequenced out appropriately, maximizing out an event calendar and making the pickle like the hottest place to be in the Lakes community area. So we're actually saying lean into that, right? More events, more bands, more community engagement and all of that. That drives not just a tremendous net benefit of revenue and profit back to it, but other net financial benefit back to the city that isn't as widely talked about as it should be. Terry runs an incredibly profitable benefit that is next Friday, right? The 3rd, that comes into the tune of like $25,000, $27,000, I think it was last year, back to the fire department, right? That doesn't exactly hit your P&L in a way that screams the headlines that it should, because it is reported through a different channel, right? So the net benefit of the pickle, what I'm trying to say, is above and beyond the P&L that you see and should be recognized more in a way that elevates those dollars up. Threats. Seasonal labor is competitive for staffing, but we don't believe that it is a threat that would allow you to consider any of our other recommendations. We're just recognizing that it's a competitive market to get people there than it is in other places as well. The bottom line with the pickle, modest price increases and a reduction in promotion. Those are the 2 things, right? So one thing we've seen with the general managers in place over the last 4 months is they've already taken some of these recommendations and have instituted them, right? So they're not waiting in some cases to do some of this work already. Terry just increased some prices over at the pickle again before the summer, right? Right on June 1st, I think it was, right? To grab more incremental, really profit per drink, right? Than what is there today. There's more to be done there. Your pricing is still incredibly value driven, and there's more to be brought back into the city and for the citizens in pricing, as well as combining that with what we target as a 20% reduction in promotions, right? When you look at the promotional lines in the P&L, those come in really 2 big categories, happy hour and the pickle nickel. We believe that there are easily about a 20% over promotional period that we have there, where we would consider like not having a happy hour on a Friday, right? In the off season, especially. Really tightening down the controls over the pickle nickel and so on. So those 2 things together are fixes that can happen. We believe that really without material change or investment into the pickle, that you're looking at a net revenue increase of about 13.6% by just looking at assortments, pouring practices, pricing, and promotions. The other factor into it is a cocktail program, right? Really introducing that. Terry's put some legworks into that as well, but that needs to be instituted on an ongoing basis. Cocktails are incredibly popular and fashionable and all those things. And profitable, right? You're looking at often twice the revenue and 2.5x the profit per pour in a cocktail than you are in a mixed drink. So we estimate that at only 5%, somewhere in profit, say $10,000 in the middle line. Consistent execution, that can definitely be attributed back to overall sales. That means we're getting to customers to refill, we're offering food every time, those types of service models, so on. And then if we can get to using Burger and Tots as an example, if we can get to moving your food mix from 10% to 20%, that would just in straight dollars equate to $125,000 per year. Going back to something Mark said, your 90-10 split right now, your returns back are incredibly low at a 90% liquor business. And you don't want your food business margin-wise and income-wise, net profit-wise, to really exceed that 25-30%, because it's like it's best equated to like a factory. You need a tremendous amount of labor to produce that food line, which doesn't have the margins that the beverage lines do. Okay, last slide on the pickle, and then it picks up a little bit from here. So we broke this out, right? Raise prices, cut discounts, incremental sales per year, somewhere in the 171,000. 5%, right, of cocktails. In addition to that, we highly recommend that you bring a couple things back in-house, self-managing the ATM and bringing that into the operations of the pickle and not including it in your vending contract. That's conservative at $6,000 to $8,000 per year, but probably on your pull tab business, you could probably look at somewhere around $1,000 a month, probably in that $12,000 range just on ATM fees. The electronic pull tabs, the screens themselves, we need standard operating procedures for when the Lions aren't supporting that business, that business is still up and running in the pickle, which right now it's really not, with SOP and labor the way that it is. That's a net of $5,000 to $8,000 without, again, changing anything other than just expectations and how you're operating. And then again, food is the wild card, right? Food is going to take some investment that has to be quantified and then make some decisions upon what that return would be on. But we're looking, we believe, conservatively, that $300,000 range in bottom line increase in sales and somewhere in net profit of 45K. Again, we believe that these are pretty highly conservative numbers on the pickle as well.
Quick question.
Yes.
You've been around a lot of bars and stuff like that. What's your take on a bar boy? You know what a bar boy is?
Bar back?
Bar back?
Yeah, bar bag, bar boy.
Sure.
What's your take on those versus the free pour?
I don't know if I know what free pour.
Free pour. No,
Oh, free pour.
yeah, free pouring. You've been around a bar, it's no shot glass, maybe a
No,
shot
it's in our
glass.
It's
recommendations.
recommendations that you absolutely need to institute a pouring practice at the pickle.
Yeah.
Yes.
No more free pouring.
So a lot of the places that you're dealing with right now, you see them going to like I call them a bar boy.
Oh, gotcha.
Oh.
That's what you meant.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
Yes.
And it's still a pretty, Bruce, it's a pretty mixed bag out there. And I would actually say that the minority. of
What are they
places-
setting them at?
Huh?
What are they setting them at?
An ounce and a half.
Ounce and a half.
Ounce and a
huh?
half. Yeah,
Okay.
it's one of the reasons we can't be confident in our financial assessments and profit, because we cannot, in our observations, in the practice, we cannot come to a margin rate for a single pour drink, a cocktail, because it's all over the place depending upon who's making it.
No way are you gonna get 32 drinks out of a quart. So what do you like to see?
It's the general practice is 1.5 ounces per mixed drink in a mixed cocktail, but it depends upon the recipe of the cocktail in addition to that.
Right.
Yep.
Thank you.
You bet.
I did want to say that when you look at the numbers for food, what we can't put into our model, but you should consider is if the pickle were to have a more appealing food offering, what we can't predict is how many people would stay longer at the pickle because right now they're choosing to go somewhere else to eat. And if they were to stay there and have a meal and have more meals there, would you have an increase in the beverage sales as well? Because right now we do know that there's some folks who are just not staying to eat.
Counselor Hall has a question.
Yeah, so you actually go back to that last slide. Yeah. So, I guess here's kind of the wet blanket question, right?
Okay.
So, the pickle is an asset. We do own that building, we own the facility, the property, everything like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Also, too, you guys have hit on it, the pickle, the pickle, the pickle, the whole hat analogy. You can go anywhere. People know the pickle.
Great brand, highly recognizable.
So branding, that's what I'm getting at. Why would we stay in with the operations and running the pickle ourselves with the risk, liability, and overhead? So it's just a math question. What we can lease out or rent out a facility like that per square foot to an outside operator, and we control the branding with the pickle and sell off the brand of the pickle, control how we would market that percentage of return on profit by somebody else running it to the bottom line. Now we are just a landlord. We get rid of the risk, liability, overhead, and you do the math per the square foot price. Plus, we put the value on what the pickle name means for somebody else to own and operate with a percentage return on sales on that. Why would we stay into the operation with those numbers? Because even the square foot price return on being a landlord comes in at that price. And then if you add in the additional deduction in labor, staff, risk, liability, overhead, it still outperforms the numbers shown there.
Yeah. A few things is one, just for the sake of a speedy response, I want to separate out liability and risk versus revenue and profit, just to make sure. I think what you're trying to highlight is that alcohol businesses do have an inherent risk. They require escalated insurances, right? There can be claims that can be catastrophic. Is that what you're alluding to?
Yeah, it's just one of the things that
Okay.
would be added on to it. You know, my
Yeah.
main point too is if we just lease out the space today at the current lease rate for something like that, we're still outperforming what's showing there just as a landlord.
Yep.
And then plus we have the brand that's been well established, the pickle. We can turn that over to somebody and we can facilitate that in many different ways.
Yeah.
Somebody can pay for the brand,
Yeah.
you know, keep a percentage of the profits
Yep.
coming in, so it's not a fixed thing going up. You
Yep.
know, there's a lot of different ways
Yeah.
to sell branding, a long-term name like that.
Mhm.
And the risk, the liability, the overhead, the staff, that goes away, and it's outperforming instantly what you're still showing there.
So, for the sake of what could be a really long and fun discussion.
Right.
Right? We did not evaluate franchising, branding rights, like those types of things, because our recommendation is that this is a value to the city to retain. It doesn't mean, Joe, that you're not making great points, that there's value in the brand, the building, and different ways to make money there. I'm not discounting that at all.
Right.
But there are other, it has to be said. There's an institutional and historical reason why cities continue to operate in this that becomes pretty meaningful back to the community and back to your citizens that are in some cases just as important as profit, right? So that needs to be considered by this body and this group as well, right?
Yeah, and I'm just asking the questions because it
Can I
goes to the
give you an
ROI
idea?
and to the amount, you know,
Mhm.
we still need to put in all this stuff, which is
Yeah.
7 figures into that.
Mhm.
And the ROI, the payoff over a 10-year period of time,
Yeah.
it's, the math still isn't there for me.
I would like to give you an idea, and I'm not saying you're not, I love that you're thinking about this, because I
Right.
think there's lots of different ways for the city to think about how do they make the most out of this asset on behalf of their citizens. But one of the things I would say is you need to think about the long-term and the short-term view. In the short term, in 2020, I don't know, 7, could you franchise this out, lease this out, and make more money than you might make in 2027? Maybe, yeah. But could you say that with certainty for 2037 and beyond? I think when you have that leased out to another third party, there's a maximum to what you're ever going to take of what, you know, your share of their revenue is going to be, or your share of their profits, and you won't have control over that, which is a big important thing for a lot of municipalities for having these operations, is they like to know that they have control over who is being served, how much they're being served, the legality of controlling that substance. And then finally, you're looking at comparing an optimized leasing out against a sub-optimized operation right now.
Yeah.
And I would say that is a great question to have once you feel like you've pushed this operation to get as good as it can be, and you're still saying, gosh, I still don't think it's quite worth it. But right now, what I see is this operation has not been pushed to be as good as it could be. It could deliver a lot more, and then you could make that choice. That would be my recommendation.
Okay, I just have one thing sort of tagging on to that. A resident wrote in who could not be here tonight.
Okay.
His name is Mr. Bruce Imholt. He had said regarding the pickle, I disagree with the option to keep as a city-owned business. Please ask your consultants if they have reviewed Minnesota State Auditor's report on city-owned on sales that are closing each year. He sent this to council, so in fairness, because he couldn't be here, I just had to bring it up since it's kind of tagging on to this.
He wants us to comment on how many on sales are closing per
Yeah,
year.
he said, ask your consultants if they have reviewed the Minnesota State Auditor's report on city-owned
Every
on
year.
sales that are closing
Every
each
year.
Every year. and
Every
we-
year,
we
they're
use it
closing.
And
Yeah.
reference it monthly when we're engaged with clients. So yes, they're
Yeah.
closing. And they're closing for reasons that NISWA is not facing.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
He was on the city council for Detroit Lakes.
Got you. Okay. Yeah.
19
Detroit
years.
Lakes has a successful
Yeah.
municipal business.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Good.
There are
Okay.
some amazingly successful munis, and there are some that are not. So, yep, we see them closing every year, and there are some that are just doing fabulous. So we want to get you to that other one.
Before you jump into the strategic and tactical recommendations, again, I'll just do a quick pause. If anyone that is here from the public has any specific questions or comments just about that pickle section, you're welcome to come forward. Otherwise, if not, we will move on to the recommendations. Going once, going twice. Okay, we will proceed.
We're going to try our best to save time, but potentially we could do this in about 15 minutes, the rest of the day. We're going to move fast.
Okay.
If you're moving too fast, slow us down. If you have a question, please let us know. But
Thank you.
All right, so we have a lot of detail. Thank you. We have a lot of detailed recommendations in the report for those of you who have read it. But we want to go through quickly and talk about what our high-level strategic recommendations are, again, for both spirits and the pickle. We think that really there should be a lot more strengthening that this is a muni value proposition, that there's a lot that could be done by calling out that it is owned by the city of Nisswa and what it does for the city and what it does for its residents. So it's been shied away from, and we think that's kind of surprising because there's a real value there that nobody else can talk about. I can go to Cashwise, I could go somewhere else, but you know what? Their money doesn't go back to my community. It doesn't pay for the things that I want. So I think that's important. We've already talked about consolidating leadership and redesigning the organization. We really think that that's important because when you do that, you're going to be able to control the financial performance, hold that person accountable, and really make sure that you're optimizing the transfers back to the city. We think that there should be stronger performance management for these businesses, that the city ought to be holding them to a higher level of accountability, but also providing training and oversight and development so that the people who are running these businesses can improve all the time. And finally, having improved financial reporting and business visibility. The numbers that the city looks at to evaluate the business health of these businesses today are not the right numbers, and we don't know if that's because the city doesn't have access to that, doesn't have the time and resources to do it, or just doesn't know how. But in any case, we would recommend that reporting change. Yeah, we have talked about this. We're going to talk in detail about this later. It is a pretty standard practice that at a very baseline, you should be targeting 1% of your revenue to go into marketing and advertising. That is a very low threshold to hit. And there's almost no money being put from these operations into marketing and advertising. There are very targeted things that could be done with Google local search, audio ads, Nextdoor, Spotify, a whole lot of things that could say, I just want it to be delivered to a very small radius to get people to know about what's going on at the Spirits and the Pickle. We definitely need to have better training where there's very structured onboarding, where seasonal and full-time and year-round employees are getting trained regularly on how to do their jobs better and more efficiently and to the same standards so that when shoppers or customers come into those businesses, they're having a similar experience. Communication calendars, consistent messaging, all of these things need to be improved. You've got one side of the business using technology, for example, for scheduling, and another side of the business that doesn't use it at all. And for the employees who work in that area, they get very different experiences about understanding when they're on shifts, when their shifts change, things like that. And again, there really should be some documented SOPs, even beyond just like what's a store opening and closing checklist, but things that should really help the city, like having a cash handling SOP, what happens at the end of the night, when are bank drops made and who's responsible for bank drops. All of those things should be handled in an SOP that is adhered to. Tactically, we have already talked about the fact that we think Spirits could reduce its labor expense by 0.5% of sales each month until they eventually get to 10% of sales, a very, very comfortable baseline for most retailers to run their store with 10% of their sales as the benchmark for their labor expense. Inventory productivity needs to be improved. They need to measure inventory turn. And inventory turn should be something like beer should turn 15 times a year. Ready-to-drink seltzers and THC should be turning 12 times a year. Premium wine should be turning about 4 times a year. We've got these detailed out in the report. But again, you need to be measuring that and then managing to that by changing what you're buying and how much of it you're buying. We think that there should be a new loyalty program put in. You already have the technology built inside your POS system. Most municipal operations that are successful are using that loyalty program to drive sales with their customers and get them to come back. This is especially effective when I know that you're a bourbon drinker and I can tell you that I have a special bourbon that's just come in. You're a wine drinker. I have a whole case sale, things like that where people are like, oh, I'm going to come back to that. That's really important. Driving traffic, driving promotions. We need transaction counts to come up. And the only way transactions go up is if footsteps through the door comes up. So we have got to get outside the store and to give customers a reason to come into the Spirits, a reason to come in and a reason to come in now. Not just like, oh, it's going to be on sale all month, but it's only going to be on sale this week. So if you want this price, you have to come in now. And then there's a whole lot of no cost or low cost programs that the Spirits could lean into. Everything from receipt promotions, bring this back and get 10% off if you come back within 7 days, bag stuffers, and a lot more shelf edge vendor funded programs like rebates and stuff that today you can't really find at the store. For the pickle, definitely need to get that POS system running properly so that you can produce the kind of reporting you need to produce to evaluate your yields and your profit on the on sale. Yes, you need to raise prices somewhat, but more importantly, you need to pour consistently. And I know people are going to be sad to see the pickle pour go away, but a measured pour spout and training. Oh, combats. I thought that was like combatants. There's a lot of invisible leakage. You know, when I look at what you're supposed to get out of a bottle, what you're supposed to get out of a keg, we can't evaluate it, but we can see what we can see. And we know that there's a whole lot that is going away. Non-negotiable customer service standards. So training and holding everyone accountable to the same standard of excellent service. Launching that seasonal cocktail menu, we put some examples of ideas that you could have that would make people and encourage people to spend a little bit more on having a drink at the pickle and make it kind of fun for people to sell. Discontinue some happy hours and discounts. For example, Friday happy hour from May to August, reducing pickle nickel some other times of the year. Self-managing the ATM, renewing the electronic pull tabs, and we've beat that burger and fry solution to death. We have inside the report a start, stop, continue analysis that we recommend people start to do. For the Spirits, really starting with working on how to do better buying by looking at how to buy to drive your inventory turn, restocking your sales more, your store more frequently, your shelves more frequently, yes, but also turning that inventory and making it more profitable. There's a whole lot in there. I'm not going to go through all of this. There's a stop, start, continue for the pickle. We've already talked about most of these. Some of the things we think that they should definitely continue doing is the Lions pull tabs and firefighter fundraising. There's a lot of really great events like the Bocce League, bands and programs. We think there should be more. Yes, you should keep your free popcorn, just clean up that station. A whole lot of stuff there. So, see if we can do it.
Okay. Thanks. All right. How do you do this? How do you make this real? How does this actually happen? Is one, you have to be realistic. It's the week before 4th of July, okay? That doesn't mean that there can't be real change that happens between now and the end of the year, but we need to be respectful of the capacity and what the priorities are. The priorities are you're in full seasonal mode, right? Spirits is about 4.5% up, right? Versus their off season in December and so on. So it's a big deal to recognize that they need to keep operating it. However, there needs to be change that needs to be set into place, which our decisions should be made, right? A path forward should be charted. And these businesses should be supported in a way because they're up and running and you have customers and the budgets and cities expecting a return back on it. Near term, you start to layer on in the fall, incremental change, prioritizing the organizational redesign, marketing levers that can be more easily pulled, launching some new business rhythms and meeting rhythms, and fine tuning some buying practices. Longer term is where you get into facilities, right? And what's going to happen in terms of lease versus own the spirits, remodel versus rebuild the pickle. Capability building is also a long-term endeavor, right? Capability in the administrative staff and the liquor leadership staff as well. And then food service deployment as well. Because that will take investment and infrastructure, that's likely a year to 3 years out as well. A new operating cadence needs to happen, which means that leaders need to get together on a regular basis, talking about 3 things: people, process, and performance, those 3 things, in a forward-looking manner. What we usually see in cities is what we found in Nisswa. We're reporting on our business results, and we're not doing much to carry those business results forward, right? So the time dimension needs to change, where you're flipping that to about 80% forward-looking agendas and 20% historically looking agendas as well. You have pages in this report that dimension out the agendas we recommend, the actual metrics you look at that should be present in all of these meetings, who should be there, how often they should happen as well. I won't get into the detail of all of those. This is a standard metric set across retail and restauranting that we believe the city absolutely needs. The P&L is, again, a historical indicator and will give you some great long-term trends. It will not give you really good insight to choices that were made, behaviors that have changed, or consumer trends in a short period of time, where you can make faster decisions based on this. These numbers come from POS data instead of accounting data. There's real market and external factors that happen. We don't believe that there's anything in Nisswa's market that is preventing you from being confident in your business. Your population is growing. You have an incredibly envious high household income. You have a great tourism and seasonal traffic. There's nothing here that points us that in any other direction other than confidence in it. We were asked to do a competitive assessment of each business. We did that. We ranked it by, we divided it by pricing, assortment, your merchandising or presentation of the store or pickle, and then the customer engagement. We shopped these places, we visited these places. We also brought in our own experience from other munis and other private businesses to give a pretty fair and objective point of view. So Nisswa, as an example, one thing we hear commonly in markets that we come into is muni liquor stores are more expensive than private liquor stores. Overarchingly, that's correct. The spirits pricing is incredibly competitive. It's pretty well tuned. There's some opportunities here and there with it, but it's on par. It's not a disadvantage in this market at all. Your merchandising and store presentation is excellent. It's clean, it's faced, it's priced, it's organized well, it flows well. There's a lot that should be recognized in how that store's merchandising, cleanliness, pricing, and so on is developed, maintained, and so on. For the pickle, the pricing is an advantage so much that you need to take advantage of that and drive more profit back to the city. The assortment is below, largely having to do with food, not having a cocktail menu. The presentation is more about the facility itself, and then the customer engagement is about consistency. That's why that is below as well. So final thoughts, here we are. The city needs to make clear and swift decisions about these businesses, because these businesses are declining and action needs to be taken to make a commitment back to these businesses so that they can return what they're put in place to, which is offsetting levies, driving program benefit back to the citizens, and keeping the traditions alive that's within the community itself. Clear, consistent, documented standards. We've already talked about that. The expectations of roles and responsibilities from city council and elected officials to city administration, to leadership, to part-time. That needs to be revisited through job descriptions, through SOPs, and maybe through some workshopping of really understanding how these three different groups of leaders work together to keep the business running. Leadership development needs to happen across the business in financial, operational, and technology capabilities, and then reinforcement through city rhythms and support. Next steps. We have another session tomorrow morning for 3 hours with the liquor team to go through this in a tactical way. That is a business meeting. That is something that we do to say, hey, this is 44 pages of information and we've spent 4 months doing this. Let's get into the weeds a little bit. Let's sequence some things you can do now. Let's talk about anything maybe we're disagreeing about and come to some next steps or so on. So that is the very next step is we'll be running a business meeting with the liquor leadership team tomorrow morning. Again, do not lose focus on this summer versus changing the business. Expect though that in addition to running the business, you can make meaningful change right now. Make clear and swift decisions, maintain clear and defined lines within the city operations. And again, those words, practice versus policy, oversight versus operations, right? And you're going to need help. We've provided a perspective and analysis and recommendations this far. We always draw the line in our engagements on recommendations, and it does not carry forward to implementation. You have a second SOW from us, which satisfies what we believe is a responsible level of implementation. That SOW has been provided to you. We do not need to go into detail of that tonight, but I will tell you that the timelines are probably the most important thing to address. If you want to make your 2027 year materially different, that work needs to start in August. In order to start in August, you need to make that decision on that SOW in July. And we've also, just in transparency, mapped our capacity in that way as well, where we can guarantee our capacity and the commitment we made to you in the SOW until July 15th. That being said, we fully support you. We are impressed by these businesses. I have said to people in this room, friends and family, that if these businesses were private and for sale, Michael Bitzer would be interested, okay? That's the level that we believe you're in, and it's opportunistic and it's unusual. It's a really amazing time for the city of Nisswa to recommit to these businesses, make some strong, swift, and clear decisions, and set a chart forward. With that, any last questions, or however I could turn it back over to you, madam?
Well, first, I want to thank you both. We really appreciate all the work, the engagement, the depth, the strategy, the thought, right? Even getting down to tactics. I think this is a very robust report, and we do appreciate the engagement and time. It's been wonderful to work with you both. You've been very professional, I think, with all of us. So thank you for that. One quick question I have, then I'll open it up to council for any final questions or thoughts. You mentioned this additional statement of work, and we don't have to go into it now, but you do mention July 15th. Our next council meeting is not until July 21st. Is there an opportunity for council to be able to vote at that meeting one
Yes.
way or another?
Yes.
Okay,
We used, admittedly, I didn't look at your calendar, and we just lined up
sure.
mid-month dates, but yes, of course.
Okay, thank you. I'll turn it to council to see if there's any last questions or comments. Councilmember Fraley,
I have none.
Councilmember London, Councilmember Zahn,
Thank you both very much.
Councilmember Hall.
Yeah, all I would like to say is thank you, but then also for the people in the audience listening and whatever, a discussion like this creates a lot of emotion with people. Also highs and lows, and it's easy in something like this to focus on the negative. And I would say, I want everyone out there to know, like, you know, from my point of view, there's so much more positive that you presented here tonight than the negative. So I would encourage people out there in the public here, listening as you go about talking, sharing about this, to really do that, focus on the positive. We do have some great people working at these places. They have got them to this point, kept them to this point. And this report, once again, reflects up this direction as much as towards the employees and stuff. There have been key leadership roles missing within the city that has been overseeing the current staff and management, and that is nothing with the staff and management. It more points this direction with the policy, and I think everybody up here, you know, realizes that, you know, at this point in time, and you know, our commitment to the town, the employees and stuff, to make those decisions on our end so we can go ahead. But yeah, that's what I'd say. Focus on the positive.
Thank you again very much. We really appreciate it.
Welcome.
And have fun on the 3-hour meeting tomorrow.
Well, I don't know that we're done.
Oh, you're not?
No.
Okay.
And I mean that the way that I said it. I don't know that we're done, but we do have 2 additional topics on the agenda, which are closed
Yes.
sessions. Okay.
But we're gonna stay in open, so we're gonna bounce.
Okay,
And then we'll
great.
come
That-
back to it.
okay, that's
But-
what I-
So thank you.
You're
So
welcome.
yeah, stick around.
Yes.
So yeah, next on the agenda, we have the EDA. So under it, appointing members and the organizational resolution. For those who were at the council meeting last Tuesday or had a chance to watch it, we've obviously had some discord and acrimony around the EDA, the timelines, the appointment process and whatnot. So my update in terms of the EDA at this point in time is that I did finish the final interview with Brandon Headland. He was the kind of laggard that we were not able to get in on the 3 previous dates. And as a reminder, I think we did May 16th, June 2nd, and maybe June 16th were the 3 interviews. I interviewed Mr. Headland alone yesterday because Mr. Glenn from Bladeck left for vacation, and he is not back until July 3rd. So I was able to get that done. The only difference for his interview, like I said, is Mr. Glenn wasn't there, and he, as we went through the interviews, our approach was the same for everyone. He talked about, you know, what an EDA is and gave that background. So Brandon is welcome to call him if he has any questions on that. With that being said, there may be disappointment here. I am not ready to appoint tonight, and here is the reason why. I did not have awareness that in addition to me making the 7 appointees, so the 5 from the public and the 2 from the council, that I also have to appoint them for the terms. Are they 1 year, 2 year, 3, 4, 5, 6, or 6? We did not ask any of the applicants, hey, would you be, which of these would you be willing to serve for? And I want to be able to go back and do that before I make the appointments. So my commitment to this council, if you are open to it, is I will call a special meeting, or 2 of you can, for Monday, July 6th at 5 PM for the appointments. And the reason I say Monday, July 6th is because next week is the 4th of July week. It's just going to be too busy. But I will commit to having those appointments at that point in time, the 5 from the public and the 2 from the council, if the council would be amenable to that.
I'm amenable to that.
Councilmember Fraley?
Yeah,
Oh, sorry.
I'm okay with that.
Okay. Councilmember Zahn, did you have something?
I was just prepping to talk,
Oh,
to give my response. I thought you were gonna come down the line.
yeah, sorry. Oh, Councilmember London?
Yeah, check the schedule and see how things are going.
I'm fine with that.
Councilmember Hall?
Well, I guess I'm not sure what other options that we have. I mean, we've talked about this though several months ago. The appointment times and schedules, that's been talked about several times.
We have
So
no,
I don't, yeah, but I have no idea about the 6th and the time frame, and,
I will not be here.
right, I can't answer that. But I'm not sure what other options we have.
we can find a different date that works for people. I was trying to do it as expediently to show collaboration from the council that I'm not trying to delay this, right? I want to be able to go back and ask everybody before I say, hey, candidate A, you're 6 years, candidate B, you're 5 years, right? I just think it's right to be able to get that input from everyone that submitted an application and interviewed. I just think that's a professional process to go through. So actually, that's incorrect. Once the EDA is formed, they will decide that amongst themselves. Yeah, and the other thing I guess I should share this is just, it's the way that I like to conduct business. I also would like to be able to call the folks and say, hey, I'm going to recommend appointing you, make sure they still want to do it. And the ones that didn't, I'd like to call them too, so that the first time they're hearing it is not a surprise, like, hey, the council meeting, or hey, I just read this in the newspaper. I just think that's the right approach. So if councils, go ahead, Councilmember Fraley.
Would you want this meeting in the morning or the evening?
Whatever works for, I mean, if we want to be open and have the most people probably from the public able to attend, I think the evening would be better, right? Just given folks' schedules if they work, right? And I think too, we're in the busy season. There are a lot of business owners that applied for this. If they wanted to be able to be here for that, if we did in the morning, are they going to be able to be here versus the evening?
I'll make a motion to table this EDA topic to a date, preferably on the week of July 6th, to be determined.
I'll second.
Okay, any additional discussion or questions? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Okay, motion carries. And then just really quick, and I know we're getting late, I did ask Mr. Kishalishin to come here because of his experience in starting one of the first EDAs and HRAs as the mayor of Roseville. And Mr. Kishalishin, if you wouldn't mind, and I don't want to spend more than like 5-8 minutes on this if possible, because there have been questions that have come up and I think it's caused confusion. And I just thought it'd be good, let's just all hear the same thing, right? Remember, questions have come from the public and they're things like, does the council have the power of appointment? What happens in a stalemate, right, with appointees? And then the big one that came to my mind is, are council members, because I appoint two, are they appointed for the length of their terms in office or fixed terms? And then two kind of nuanced questions, but what are we paying the commissioners? Because the state statute says the commission shall be paid. So even if it's $1, is that something we've had to think about? And then lastly, shall the city council members who sit on the commission, shall their compensation as council members also be their council compensation as EDA? And I don't think that's anything we've thought about. So if you could just take maybe 5-7 minutes, because I know we still need to go in closed
Can I
session.
just
We
say a
appreciate you being here.
quick thing?
Yeah, go ahead, Councilmember Fraley.
I know a lot of the people or some people in the audience here think that we as the council don't understand that the mayor appoints, we confirm. Also, I know that council cannot appoint unless it was in their enabling resolution that they would do so.
Can I make a
Go ahead,
request that
Councilmember
we
Zahn.
forego this piece? And it's no disrespect to you, sir. I appreciate you traveling here. I'm assuming you came from the metro, so appreciate that. Yeah, yep, understood. And we've been sitting here for just that, a little bit more, and we still have 2 more closed sessions with some folks waiting on business. Could I suggest perhaps in lieu of this, so we can use the time wisely, to perhaps have a memo, perhaps drafted by yourself, sent to the mayor and disseminated amongst us?
Appointment, sorry. Let me repeat that
Are you
again.
okay with less than 5 minutes?
Less than 5 minutes
than
and
five-
addressing,
less than
strictly
5.
addressing things that will address your meeting for appointment. Mayor, if I may?
Okay,
Okay.
less than 5, please, thank you.
Bullet point number 1, and I'm looking at, if you want to take notes here, 469.095 Minnesota statutes. States here that the city council may set the term of commissioners who are members of the city council to coincide with their term of office as members of the city council. Now, my understanding is that the council has not made a determination in your enabling resolution as to which method you would use to set those terms, which would then mean that the mayor would have the ability to appoint the 2 council members till the end of their term, or if the mayor said 4 years, that member would serve as long as they were an elected official. If they left elected office for any reason, then the mayor would be appointing, whoever the mayor would be appointing for the remainder of that time term. So that's been a determination. So the mayor will have to determine which system the mayor wishes to pick. The next point, under subdivision 4 of the statute, it says the commissioner, including the president, shall, so this is mandatory, shall be paid for attending each regular or special meeting of the authority in an amount to be determined by the city council. It would be certainly nice if the city council had actually determined what they would be paying. And since the statute says that you shall pay them, I would make a presumption that it has to be more than 1 penny or $1 for a meeting. That would be a normal per diem rate that you would perhaps pay yourself or pay others. And that should be a determination. Theory, the mayor should be specifying that to the people that are being appointed what that rate of pay would be. I don't think it did not affect anybody that I talked to as to when I did appointments as to whether they would serve or not, but it's a fact. So you're required to pay people. The last thing I will leave you with is, and I apologize, I don't have it up. Yeah, here we do. Okay. An Economic Development Authority commissioner must disclose financial interests on decisions that are before them, which is different than a citizen advisory commission. A citizen advisory commission, generally members are not making that. All of the people that you appoint to the authority should be informed in advance that under the statute, there are criminal penalties for failure to do so, no differently than you would have criminal penalties under a gross misdemeanor or misconduct of a public official for failure to disclose those. So this is not a citizen advisory commission appointment. This is an appointment similar to being a council member. With that, those are the bullet points I think the mayor needs to address with applicants. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, with that, we are to back up to item C, which is a closed session. So the agenda item is the evaluation of the performance of a City of Nisswa employee under Minnesota statute, section 13D.05, subdivision 3A. The employee is liquor store manager Brian Farrell. This portion of the meeting will be closed pursuant to Minnesota statute, section 13D.05, subdivision 3A, because the City of Nisswa will be evaluating the performance of an individual subject to its authority, liquor store manager Brian Farrell. I will now entertain a motion to close this portion of the meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, motion by Councilmember Zahn, second by Councilmember Fraley. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed. Okay, motion carries. The time is 7:49. The city will now go into a closed session here in the city council chambers. Only the city council, representatives from Delaney Consulting, the City of Nisswa interim administrator, legal counsel, and Mr. Farrell may initially attend the closed session. Do you have any request to have the meeting open, or would you like it to stay? Okay. All right. We need to.
Chris, okay, he's gone.
Okay,
Right.
the closed portion of this meeting is being electronically recorded pursuant to Minnesota statutes, section 13D.05, subdivision 1. Attendees need to state your name for the record, so.
But we have
Oh.
to, you have to give me like 5 minutes because I have to actually close this
Sure.
regular meeting
Okay.
and go into.
All right, so we'll give Meg